Welcome back to educator.com. For the next lesson, we're going to continue solving equations. We're going to solve multiplication equations. So equations that involve multiplication, we're going to continue to solve using inverse operations. Okay, and again, whenever you solve equations, you always have to try to get the variable by itself. Okay, and then the inverse operation of multiplication is division. Now, if I have a number being multiplied to a variable, so 2 times a, and remember, if you have a number times a variable, you can write it together like that, equals 10. Let's say that's my equation. Okay, so then this would be a multiplication equation. This is 2 times a, 2 times the variable. Now, we can do this in our head, right? We know that 2 times 5 equals 10, so we know a is 5. But if I were to solve this using inverse operations, okay, again, I want to get the variable by itself, right? So I have to get rid of whatever's next to the variable on that side. So on the left side, I have to get rid of everything except for the variable. Okay, get the variable by itself. That means I have to get rid of this 2. Since this is 2 times a, the inverse operation would be to divide. So to get rid of the 2, we have to divide the 2. Divide this 2. We know that 2 over 2 is going to go away. It's going to become 1. Whatever you do to this side, remember you have to do to the other side. So if I divide 2 from here, then I have to go to the right side and then divide 2 there. Okay? So this then becomes 1a. Well, 1a is the same thing as a. Whenever you have a variable with no number in front of it, like this one does, there's an invisible 1 here. And it's just saying that you have 1a. You have, how many a's do you see? You see one of them, right? If I say I have an apple, you know I have only one apple. I didn't say I have one apple, but just because I said I have an apple and I made it singular, you know that I have one. So in the same way, if I have an a, you know that I have one of them. And that just means that there's an invisible 1 in front of it. So when this number cancels out like that, you don't have to write 1a. You can just write a, which is the same thing as getting the variable by itself, right? Okay, so again, whether you write the 1 in front of the a or just leave it as a, it's the exact same thing. Okay? So, by itself now, right? That's the whole point. We want to get it by itself. We got rid of the 2. Equals, and then on the right side, I have to actually solve that out. So that becomes 10 divided by 2. And remember this line right here, like a fraction, okay, that represents divide. So this would be 10 divided by 2. We know that 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay? So that would be my answer. And that's how you would solve multiplication equations using inverse operation. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our examples. Okay, the first set of examples, we're going to use mental math, meaning we're just going to solve in our head. We don't have to, divide or use inverse operations. So here, again, this means 3 times f. Okay, 3f means 3 times f. So 3 times what is 9? 3 times what equals 9? Well, I know 3 times 3 equals 9, so f has to be 3. Now again, when you're solving equations, you don't want to just write 3. You don't want to just write the number. Okay, you have to write what that number represents. You're saying that f is 3, right? So once you write it like that, variable by itself equaling the number, then that's your answer. 10 times what equals 100? 10 times 10 equals 100. So then I have to say A is equal to 10. 18 equals C times 6. Okay, so this C times 6, same thing, whether you see it like this or whether you see it like that, they both mean multiplication. So what times 6 is 18? Well, I know 3 times 6 is 18, so that means C has to be 3. And the next one, 21 equals 3 times a number. 3 times what equals 21? 3 times 7 equals 21. So that means P has to be 7. Okay, so now let's use the inverse operation to solve the equation. So we're going to use that method that we did earlier. We're going to use that same method to go ahead and solve for our variable. So this is negative 10 times S equals 100. Now I'm solving for S, right? I'm solving for my variable. I can circle it to see that that's what I want. That's my goal. That's what I'm solving for. I'm separating my sides. So since this is negative 10, that number times S, inverse operation of times is divide. So to get rid of this negative 10, I have to divide it. Okay, so I'm going to use the inverse operation to get rid of the number and get the variable by itself. So I need to divide. Remember this line right here, writing it as a fraction? That means divide. Okay, so whatever I do to one side, remember I have to do to the other side. So I have to divide this side by negative 10 also. Then, what is left on this side? On my left side of the equal sign, I got rid of that number. Okay, I want to get the variable S by itself. Now that I got rid of negative 10, I have S by itself now, right? So I'm going to write S, that's what's left on my left side, equals, okay, so what became of my right side? 100 divided by negative 10. Now, remember, when you multiply or divide integers, meaning positive and negative numbers like this, you still get the same number. So, let's say I don't see that negative sign, right? Then I'm still going to do 100 divided by 10. Okay, whether or not this number is negative or positive, you're still going to divide 100 to 10. But if you have one negative number, if only one is negative, then your answer becomes negative. So it's the same number when you divide. You're just going to do 100 divided by 10. But you only see one negative sign in that problem, then my answer becomes a negative. Same number, just a negative sign in front of it. If I have two negative signs, so whether it's a negative times a negative or a negative number divided by a negative number, whenever you see two of them, those two negative signs will pair up, and become a positive. And this is only when you multiply or divide. Okay, two negatives make a positive. So one negative, it remains a negative. If you have two negatives, it becomes a positive number. Okay, so this is 100 divided by 10. That's still 10, right? But because there's only one negative sign here within this problem, there's only one, so then my answer becomes a negative. So S equals negative 10, and that's my answer. Okay. The next one, again, you're solving for T. Separate the sides. I have to get rid of the 2, right? To get T by itself, I have to get rid of the 2. This is 2 times T. So in my inverse operation, I have to divide the 2. Remember, this line means divide also. Okay, that goes away. And then I have to divide this side by 2, right? Then on my left side, I only have t left, which is what I want, equals negative 16 divided by 2. Now, a positive 16 divided by 2 is 8. I know 2 times 8 is 16, right? But since I have only one negative sign within this problem, my answer stays a negative. Be careful not to confuse multiplying, dividing positive and negative numbers and adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. When you add two negative numbers, that doesn't become a positive. Only when you multiply or divide two negative numbers. Okay? So that's my answer. For the third one, I'm solving for my variable r. It's on the right side of my equal sign, right? This is my left side and this is my right side. So I'm solving for r. I have to get rid of the 5, okay, because r has to be, the variable has to be by itself. So this is 5 times r. I have to get rid of the 5 using the inverse operation, dividing. Okay, that's my way of making that go away. Okay, then since I did it to this side, I have to do it to the other side. 25. Now I'm going to simplify. I'm going to solve everything out now. 25 divided by 5 is 5. We don't have to worry about any positive or negative numbers because there's no negatives. 25 divided by 5 is just 5. Bring down the equal sign. This is r. Okay, r by itself because we got rid of the 5. Okay, and that's my answer. And again, if you want, you can leave it like that as your answer, or you can say r equals 5. You can rewrite it. Okay, 5 equals r, or r equals 5. It's the same exact thing. And this last one, again, I'm solving for d, the variable. Separate my two sides. This is 8 times d, so to get rid of it, inverse operation would be to divide. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So what's left here? D only equals 64 divided by 8 is 8. But because I have one negative sign when I'm dividing numbers, my answer becomes a negative. So it's negative 8. So that is my answer. Okay, here is negative 2 a solution of each equation? They're asking if negative 2, the answer for the variable. Well, that means I can plug this in. I can substitute in negative 2 for the variable to see if my equation is going to be true or false. Okay, so 4 times s, so instead of writing s, I can write negative 2 to see if negative 2 is what s is going to equal. So 4 times negative 2, and then remember, the best way to show two numbers being multiplied together is to write each of them in parentheses, like that, equals negative 8. Okay, so you're just seeing if 4 times negative 2 equals negative 8. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, right? 4 times 2 is 8. You only have one negative sign, so that makes that negative. So they do equal each other, right? So this does equal negative 8. So this one is yes. Is this negative 2 a solution for this equation? This one is yes. Okay, next one. 10 equals 5 times negative 2. So if I want to write it out, again, I can write both of these in parentheses to show that those are two numbers being multiplied together. Well, what's 5 times negative 2? Isn't this negative 10? Because again, 5 times 2 is 10, but then you only have one negative number, right? So this is not true. So this one is no, or false. And this one, negative 6 times negative 2 equals positive 12. So again, I'm going to write that in parentheses to show that I'm going to multiply them. 6 times 2 we know is 12. Now here I have two negative signs, right? For this, the two numbers that I'm multiplying, they're both negative. That means I have two negatives, which makes a positive, right? When you multiply or divide, two negatives make a positive. So this becomes positive 12, or just 12, right? I don't even have to write the positive. So 12 equals 12. This one is yes. This one works. Okay. So let's do a few more. We're going to solve this using inverse operations. So here, again, we're solving for the variable. Circle it. Draw a line to separate the sides. This is negative 4 times w, so I'm going to divide negative 4. Okay, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. Okay, that was my way of making that number go away and make the variable by itself. Equals. Okay, so 28 divided by 4. We have a negative divided by a negative. Now, does that make it a positive? Two negatives when you divide two negatives? Yes. So that becomes a positive 7 because 4 times 7 equals 28. So be careful, this is a positive 7. Or if you just write 7 without the plus sign, that's okay. And then number 2, and you're solving for n. I'm going to separate my sides. So here, again, I need to get rid of this number. Do not divide this number, okay? Do not try to, move this number. Don't use this. We're going to try to get rid of this number because that's what's next to the variable. And again, we're trying to get the variable by itself. So, divide negative 8, and again I divided because that was negative 8 times n. Dividing is the inverse operation. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Negative divided by negative is a positive. This becomes 10 because 8 times 10 is 80 equals, one away, left with n. Okay, same thing here. Okay, and I know some of you guys can still do this in your head. If you can, that's fine, but it's important to know inverse operations and know how to do this, these steps, because later on the equations are going to get a lot harder. And so if you know how to do it this way, then solving equations becomes really easy. So just try to practice it a few times. Just keep practicing. Circle the variable, because that's what you're solving for. To get the variable by itself, I have to get rid of this number. Divide. Divide. This goes away. This becomes negative 2. Again, positive divided by negative. I only have one negative sign, so my answer is a negative. 11 times 2 is 22. That's why it's a 2. Equals k. So there's my answer. Okay, if you want, you can flip this and make it k equal to negative 2. Or not flip, but switch the sides. Okay, you can write it like that. Okay, the last one, we're going to circle the a. This is 9 times a, so divide the 9, inverse operation, to get rid of it. 45 divided by 9 is 5. I only have one negative, so that answer stays a negative. Equals a. And that is my answer. Okay, so that's it for these multiplication equations. Thank you for watching educator.com.